is still reeling from the news yesterday of the death of the designer Alexander McQueen. Famous for his exuberant shows and outrageous clothes, the 40-year-old had been described as a genius of British fashion.
He died less than 3 weeks before his latest collection was due to be shown on the Paris catwalks. In a moment, we'll find out more about the man himself. First, here's a reminder of Alexander McQueen's inimitable style.
From a design perspective, he's one of the most brilliant designers in the world, so it's a great loss for the fashion industry as a whole, I think.
It's always really edgy and beautiful and sort of the epitome of British style.
Definite iconic identity that took risks and defined fashion for a lot of people, from Madonna to now Lady Gaga, and he's going to be sadly missed, because not just as a designer, but as a person who shared his art.
Lee McQueen was somebody that seemed so vital and so full of life, and such an important and relevant figure in both British and international fashion.
What do you get out of it?
It's like a drug. It's an adrenaline rush. A tired adrenaline rush.
Well, let's speak now to Hadley Freeman, who's the deputy fashion editor of The Guardian, and John Hitchcock, who worked alongside Alexander, otherwise known to his friends as Lee, where he was an apprentice tailor. I just wonder, Hadley, first of all, sometimes from the outside, people who aren't involved in fashion, it can seem like a strange world. But can you give people a kind of context, to get a sense of it from speaking to those people there, of just what the phenomenon was that was Alexander McQueen?
Well, McQueen, first of all, his designs look like nobody else's. They're extremely extreme, and he himself was like nobody else in the fashion world. He wasn't this kind of moi, fabulous fashion designer. He was very plain speaking. He was from the East End. He was someone completely new, and very, in many ways, he was kind of the engine behind British fashion's renaissance in the 90s. He made it exciting. He made it cool. Also, his shows were like nothing on earth. I mean, I've been going to shows for a decade now, and they can get a bit repetitive between us here. You're just kind of watching back and forth. Yeah. And his shows were always, in the past recent years, they were in Paris. They were towards the end of the fashion week, and Paris comes at the end. So you'd been on the road for about 4 weeks. His shows were always late at night, sort of in the middle of nowhere. You'd think, God, can I really face this? I just want to be home with my family. His shows were almost like rock concerts. Each one was so different. I remember one where it was a chessboard, and the models would come out and they moved around the chessboard like that. There was another one where it was sort of a homage to Hitchcock's Birds. You could hear the bird noises. The models themselves were kind of like the birds. It was like nothing you'd ever seen.
Yeah. Well, John, you're at a Savile Row Tailors, and that is where
he started.
And so what did you see in him then? The burgeoning of genius?
Well, he was learning very quickly. Yeah. I mean, he was up to the stage where he could get a jacket ready for a customer to try on for the first fitting, which was very good, because he was only really with us for 2 years. And he was learning everything, and then he's just managed somehow to convert that into the ladies' style. And it's been great, because everybody young has now decided they want to be tailors, and first choice is to come to us.
And he was 16 when he started.
He was 16,
And did he do anything cheeky with the jackets? I mean,
no,
I
it's
expect
not
you're
true.
sort of...
No, we did hear these things, and we did look inside, but it wasn't true. No.
Oh, okay, so he didn't line them with crazy lines sort of thing?
No.
Hadley, there is, of course, as always, someone with that kind of profile, apparently hugely successful, hugely admired by his peers and the fashion industry. There's clearly another life entirely going on, deep unhappiness, whatever's happened there. We just don't know really. But his mother was a huge part of his life, and a feature on all the fashion shows. She went to all the
She was. He was very close to his mother. She went to the award ceremonies with him when he was lauded many times throughout his career. Was at his shows. He lost his mother last week, his aunt last year, and his benefactress Isabella Blow, who really spotted him and helped him get started 3 years ago. So he had had a real onslaught of tragedy in the past years.
John, when you worked with him, you presumably have lots of people coming and trying to
Yes.
learn the trade. Could you spot that he was going to go places?
Not really, no.
No.
I think it was, you know,
Just-
but when he was there, he just seemed to take to it, didn't he, really? And it was marvellous, really. Marvellous for him and to be such a great success.
Yeah.
And I was reading the paper, I think it was in The Guardian, in fact, that he'd done an interview not so long ago talking about how he hoped he had a kind of legacy, that so he was going to leave something. Of course, now, suddenly, those words become terribly poignant, don't they? I mean, what does he leave behind?
Well, he certainly leaves his reputation behind. There hasn't been a British student in the past 10 years who hasn't been influenced by McQueen. I mean, what will happen to his label is going to be the next issue. He is owned by the Gucci group, but it's very hard for someone to step into a designer's shoes. I mean, McQueen himself knew this. I mean, he worked at Givenchy for a few years, not necessarily very happily, but to step into someone's shoes who no one expected to die right now and who is so recognizable, so famous, that's going to be a very hard job to take on.
Yeah. Okay, Hadley Freeman, thanks so much, and John Hitchcock as well.
Thank you.
Thank you both
Thank you very much indeed.